Welcome everyone to our next quick class in a series on dynamic seating. Today we're going to turn our attention to dynamic footrests. Now the seating dynamic footrests have three available movements. How do we know which one a client needs or what combination of these are required? That's what we're going to cover today. So again, the seating dynamic footrests provide three types of movements: a telescoping movement downward, a knee elevation movement, and finally plantar and dorsiflexion movement. So dynamic footrests are designed to absorb forces, protecting the client as well as the wheelchair frame and the seating system from harm. Many clients who have a lot of extension have been known to break a component of the footrest hanger, or at the very least move those foot plates way out of alignment. So extensor tone is now absorbed and diffused, and that reduces overall tone and posturing for the client. Movement is provided at the knee, and that can increase sitting tolerance because we're just more comfortable when we can wiggle those knees around or those legs. We might notice decreased agitation and increased alertness in clients who have this movement as well. And then finally, by providing movement within a limited range against light resistance, we can actually see an increase in strength in many clients. So let's start with the telescoping feature. This is standard on the seating dynamics footrests, and where this is appropriate is particularly for a client who has tight hamstrings. Now, the hamstrings cross the pelvis and the knee. And when these are tight, if the foot is pulled forward, as if we allow knee extension, it might actually pull the pelvis into a posterior pelvic tilt, and we don't want to do that. So for clients who have very tight hamstrings, who really have to remain at 90 degrees, we may choose to only recommend a telescoping feature. This can still provide movement, force diffusion, but without extension at the knee. Knee elevation is used in combination with this telescoping feature to follow the natural arc of the knee during extension. And if a client has the range to move into extension at all, this is the combination you really want to choose. Is again telescoping, which is standard, and then with the addition of knee elevation. This can be set at the initial starting point that works best for a client. So perhaps we start at 90 degrees, or we start at 70, 80, 90, whatever that particular person requires. So if, again, knee elevation does not pull the pelvis into a posterior tilt, then we would recommend this option. Well, what about ankle movement? There is a dynamic component on this dynamic footrest that allows the feet to push downward, toes towards floor, into plantar flexion, or upwards, toes towards ceiling, into dorsiflexion. This will allow that movement in each direction. So if your client, when they are extending throughout their lower extremities, you also notice this push into plantar flexion, then this could be a good option for that client, and the dynamic component will help the client to return then to a neutral ankle position. If the client has active ankle dorsi and or plantar flexion, then providing this option will provide movement and active range at the ankle. But if the client doesn't have that movement, or particularly if a client wears something called an AFO, an ankle foot orthosis, like the one pictured here, then that movement is not recommended because movement of the ankle is not possible. Now, there are some people who wear an AFO that is a dynamic version that does allow some movement, but if they're wearing a static, non-movable AFO, this would not be appropriate. In general, the feet need to be secured to the foot plate because otherwise when the person extends, their feet would simply move off of the foot plate. By securing them to the foot plate, the client is able to activate the dynamic components, telescoping, knee elevation, and ankle plantar dorsiflexion, depending on which features are present. So what's the bottom line? Well, seating dynamic footrests are available with 3 distinct movements. Telescoping is standard and works well for clients who have very tight hamstrings. Elevation in combination with that telescoping movement follows the natural arc of the knee and is what's recommended if someone has adequate range. And then finally, plantar dorsiflexion allows ankle movement and can further reduce extension. If you have any questions about this presentation or others, any comments or questions about dynamic seating, please reach out to Seating Dynamics or to myself, and I look forward to seeing you at a future quick class. Thanks.